My name is Alexandra Chen, and I'm the forgotten daughter of Chicago's Golden Dragon restaurant empire. Standing in our flagship location's kitchen during our Chinese New Year celebration, I watched my father prepare to make an announcement that would shatter our family forever, but not in the way he expected. You see, while he thought I was just another chef, chopping vegetables in his shadow, I had secretly built something that would bring his entire dynasty to its knees. For years, my father dismissed my culinary innovations and business ideas, always saying, "Women belong in the kitchen, not the boardroom." He was about to hand over control of our 5-restaurant empire to my lazy older brother who couldn't even properly fold dumplings. If you're watching this from a family restaurant situation, drop a comment below and subscribe to see how I turned my father's sexism into the sweetest revenge that transformed our family business forever.
I grew up in Lincoln Park, one of Chicago's most vibrant neighborhoods, surrounded by the constant hum of restaurant life. Our family home sat above Golden Dragon's original location, a 3-story building where the aroma of garlic, ginger, and 5-spice powder was as much a part of my childhood as bedtime stories. The sound of sizzling woks and rapid-fire Mandarin orders from the kitchen below served as the soundtrack to my entire life. My grandfather, Wei Chen, had started Golden Dragon in 1962 with nothing but a small storefront, a handful of family recipes, and an unbreakable work ethic. He arrived from Taiwan with $50 and a dream, sleeping on a cot in the restaurant's back office for the first 3 years while he built his customer base one perfectly crafted dish at a time. By the time my father, Thomas Chen, took over in 1985, Golden Dragon had expanded to 3 locations and was considered one of Chicago's premier Chinese dining destinations. Dad had grand ambitions that went far beyond Grandpa's modest vision. Under his leadership, Golden Dragon grew from 3 restaurants to 5, with locations spanning from Chinatown to the Gold Coast. He introduced upscale dining rooms, expanded catering services, and even launched a line of frozen dumplings sold in local grocery stores. The Chen family name became synonymous with authentic Chinese cuisine in Chicago, and Dad never let anyone forget the empire he had built from his father's foundation. But success came with a price, especially for the women in our family. Despite spending my entire childhood in the restaurant kitchens, despite showing natural talents and genuine passion for cooking, Dad clung to traditional views about gender roles that felt increasingly outdated in modern America. "Kitchen work is for women, business decisions are for men," he would say whenever I questioned why I was relegated to prep work while my older brother Kevin was groomed for management despite his obvious disinterest in the restaurant business. Kevin, now 31, had always been the golden son by virtue of being male and firstborn. Dad overlooked Kevin's chronic lateness, his habit of disappearing during busy dinner rushes, and his complete inability to connect with customers or staff. Kevin had studied business at Northwestern, but his degree seemed to serve mainly as justification for Dad's belief that he was naturally suited for leadership. In reality, Kevin spent most of his time at the restaurants scrolling through his phone or flirting with the hostesses, leaving the actual work to everyone else. Then there was my younger sister, Lily, 26, who had escaped the family business entirely by becoming a pediatrics nurse. She was the smart one, Dad would joke. Too intelligent to waste her life in restaurants like the rest of us. Lily loved our family, but she had recognized early on that the restaurant world was a trap for women. All the responsibility of keeping the business running with none of the authority to make meaningful decisions. My mother, Susan, had immigrated from Hong Kong when she married Dad, bringing with her incredible culinary skills and an unfortunate willingness to accept traditional gender hierarchies. She managed the day-to-day kitchen operations at our flagship location with remarkable efficiency, creating systems and training programs that kept our food quality consistent across all 5 restaurants.
Yet when business meetings occurred, when strategic decisions were made, when the future of Golden Dragon was discussed, Mom was expected to serve tea and remain silent. She had learned to swallow her opinions along with her pride, focusing her energy on perfecting recipes and maintaining the standards that kept customers coming back. The family dynamics were most apparent during our weekly Sunday dinners, mandatory gatherings where Dad would hold court about business strategy while the women cleaned up afterwards. Kevin would nod along to Dad's monologues about expansion plans and market positioning, occasionally offering superficial insights he had gleaned from business magazines. When I tried to contribute ideas about menu innovations or customer service improvements, Dad would smile condescendingly and redirect the conversation back to real business matters that apparently didn't include the actual food or service that made our restaurant successful. My passion for cooking had emerged naturally from growing up surrounded by incredible chefs and traditional techniques. By age 12, I could properly julienne vegetables and execute complex sauce preparations that took most culinary students months to master. I studied every cookbook I could find, experimented with fusion techniques that honored our Chinese heritage while appealing to diverse Chicago palates, and developed an intuitive understanding of flavors that impressed even our most experienced line cooks. But Dad saw my culinary skills as a dead end. Useful for keeping me busy in the kitchen, but irrelevant to the business side of our empire. When I suggested introducing dim sum service to capture the lucrative brunch market, he dismissed it as too complicated. When I proposed updating our outdated ordering system to improve efficiency, he claimed computers were too confusing for restaurant work. When I developed a series of healthy, modernized versions of traditional dishes that could appeal to health-conscious customers, he accused me of disrespecting our cultural heritage. The breaking point came when I was 25, 3 years out of the Culinary Institute of America, where I had graduated with honors and earned recognition for my innovative approach to traditional Chinese cuisine. I had spent months developing a comprehensive business plan for a new concept restaurant that would combine traditional Chinese techniques with contemporary American ingredients and presentation. The idea was to create an upscale casual dining experience that could compete with Chicago's best restaurants while honoring our family's culinary legacy. I called it Fusion Dynasty, and every detail had been carefully researched and planned. I had identified the perfect location in River North, developed relationships with local farmers and suppliers, created a menu that showcased both technical skill and creative vision, and even secured preliminary interest from potential investors who had heard about my culinary background through industry connections. Dad finally agreed to review my proposal during a family meeting on a quiet Tuesday afternoon. I remember walking into his office at the back of our flagship location, carrying a leather portfolio containing months of work, my heart pounding with nervous excitement. The office walls were covered with photos of Dad with local politicians, celebrity customers, and business leaders, a shrine to his success that had always felt more like a barrier between us than a source of pride. For 20 minutes, I presented my vision with the passion and precision I had learned in culinary school. I explained the market opportunity, detailed the financial projections, and described how Fusion Dynasty could establish the Chen family as innovators rather than just traditionalists. I showed him concept sketches of the restaurant design, sample menus that demonstrated both technical skill and creative vision, and even secured preliminary interest from potential investors who were impressed by my culinary background and business acumen. When I finished, Dad leaned back in his chair and was quiet for a long moment. I held my breath, hoping that maybe this time he would see me as more than just another kitchen worker. Instead, he shook his head with what looked almost like pity. "Alexandra, this is very creative, but completely impractical for our family business. Our customers want authentic Chinese food, not these American fusion experiments. You're thinking like a chef, not like a businesswoman." The words hit me like a physical blow. I had thought like a businesswoman. I had spent months analyzing market trends, developing financial models, and creating sustainable operational plans. But Dad couldn't see past his preconceptions about my gender and role in the family hierarchy. Besides, he continued, Kevin and I have been discussing real expansion plans. We're going to open a 6th location in Naperville, focusing on our traditional menu and proven systems. That's the kind of strategic thinking that builds lasting success. I sat there in stunned silence as he essentially handed my carefully researched location and market opportunity to Kevin, who had never shown the slightest interest in actually running a restaurant. The humiliation was complete when Dad suggested I could help Kevin with the kitchen setup at the new location, as if my culinary degree and business plan qualified me only to be my brother's assistant. That night, I made a decision that would change everything. I would leave Chicago and the Golden Dragon Empire behind. I would build something of my own, something so successful that even my father couldn't dismiss it. I would prove that my daughter could be every bit the businesswoman he claimed Kevin was destined to become. I spent the next week quietly putting my affairs in order. I had saved nearly $30,000 from my modest salary at Golden Dragon, money I had intended to invest in Dad's business, but would now use to fund my escape. I researched cities with vibrant food scenes and lower startup costs than Chicago, ultimately settling on Austin, Texas, where the restaurant industry was booming and traditional hierarchies seemed less entrenched. The night before I left, I tried one last time to explain my decision to Mom while we prepped vegetables for the next day's service. She listened quietly as I described my plans, her knife moving in steady, practiced strokes through piles of bok choy. She said, "Your father loves you, but he sees the world the way his father taught him to see it. Maybe in Texas, you can see it differently." It was the closest thing to encouragement she had ever.
Austin welcomed me with open arms and an opportunity I never would have found in Chicago's established restaurant scene. The city was experiencing a culinary renaissance, with food trucks becoming legitimate businesses and innovative chefs earning national recognition for their creative approaches to traditional cuisines. For the first time in my life, being young and experimental was an advantage rather than a liability. My first year was brutal in ways that made working in my father's kitchens seem like a vacation. I rented a studio apartment in East Austin for $800 a month, sleeping on an air mattress and eating ramen noodles to stretch my savings as far as possible. I worked 3 jobs: morning prep cook at a breakfast cafe, afternoon server at a trendy lunch spot, and night dishwasher at one of Austin's most respected fine dining establishments. The schedule was exhausting, but each position taught me something different about restaurant operations from the ground up. The fine dining job was particularly educational. Chef Marcus Williams, a James Beard nominee who had trained in France, took an interest in my culinary background and began teaching me advanced techniques during slow periods. Unlike my father, Marcus saw potential in my fusion approach and encouraged me to experiment with combining traditional Chinese methods with local Texas ingredients. "Authenticity isn't about never changing," he told me one night as we closed the kitchen. "It's about understanding the principles behind traditional techniques well enough to adapt them meaningfully." After 6 months, I had saved enough to quit the breakfast and lunch jobs, focusing entirely on learning from Marcus while developing my own culinary vision. I began experimenting with dishes that honored my Chinese heritage while embracing Texas flavors. Char siu tacos with pickled jalapenos, hot and sour soup made with local mushrooms, dan dan noodles topped with smoked brisket. The combinations shouldn't have worked, but somehow they created something entirely new while remaining true to both cultures. Marcus eventually offered me a position as his sous chef, but I knew my goal wasn't to work in someone else's kitchen forever. After 18 months in Austin, I had learned everything I could about high-end restaurant operations and saved nearly $40,000. More importantly, I had developed relationships with local farmers, suppliers, and food industry professionals who respected my skills rather than dismissing them based on my gender or family background. The opportunity came when I least expected it. A small food truck owner named Miguel Santos was struggling to keep his business afloat despite serving incredible Mexican fusion cuisine. His recipes were outstanding, but he lacked the business knowledge and capital to properly market his food or expand beyond the limited food truck circuit. We met at a food truck festival where I was helping Marcus serve samples from our restaurant, and Miguel's passionate descriptions of his dishes reminded me of my own culinary dreams. "I know food," he said, watching customers walk past his truck to wait in longer lines at more established vendors. "But I don't know business. I don't know how to make people notice me." I saw an opportunity that went beyond helping Miguel. His truck, Corazon Cocina, had excellent bones, but needed strategic investment and management expertise. More importantly, partnering with Miguel would give me hands-on experience in restaurant entrepreneurship without the massive capital requirements of starting completely from scratch. I proposed a partnership. I would invest $20,000 of my savings and handle all business operations, while Miguel focused on food preparation and recipe development. We would rebrand the truck, develop a stronger marketing presence, and use the mobile platform to test concepts for eventual expansion into a brick-and-mortar restaurant. The transformation took 6 months of 16-hour days. I redesigned the truck's menu to highlight Miguel's most innovative dishes while ensuring consistent food costs and preparation times. I developed social media strategies that showcased our fusion approach and built relationships with local food bloggers and critics. Most importantly, I implemented systems for inventory management, staff scheduling, and financial tracking that turned Miguel's passionate hobby into a sustainable business. Within a year, Corazon Cocina had become one of Austin's most popular food trucks, featured in local magazines and consistently selling out at food festivals. Our success attracted attention from investors interested in helping us expand, and Miguel insisted I take primary credit for the business turnaround. "You saved my dream," he said when we signed our first lease for a permanent location. "Now, go save your own." Using the credibility and capital I had gained from Corazon Cocina's success, I began developing my own concept. I called it Heritage House, and it represented everything I had learned about honoring tradition while embracing innovation. The restaurant would feature Chinese-American fusion cuisine that celebrated both my cultural background and my Texas experience, served in an atmosphere that felt both authentic and contemporary. I found the perfect location in Austin's rapidly gentrifying East Side, a converted warehouse space that could accommodate both casual dining and private events. The lease required a substantial down payment, but my partnership with Miguel had generated enough income to cover initial costs, while local investors, impressed with my track record with Corazon Cocina, provided additional capital for renovation and equipment. Heritage House opened 18 months after I arrived in Austin, and the response exceeded my wildest expectations. Food critics praised our innovative approach to Chinese cuisine. Customers lined up for tables weeks in advance, and industry professionals began calling me one of Austin's most promising young restaurateurs. Within 6 months, we were profitable. Within a year, we were looking at expansion opportunities. But success in Austin was only the first phase of my plan. While Heritage House established my credibility as a restaurateur, I had never forgotten my ultimate goal: proving to my father that his daughter could build something that rivaled his own empire. I began studying Golden Dragon's operations from afar, monitoring their online reviews, analyzing their social media presence, and tracking their expansion efforts through industry publications. What I discovered confirmed my suspicions. The restaurants were coasting on past reputation while newer establishments captured the attention of Chicago's evolving dining scene. Dad's refusal to innovate was becoming a liability. Golden Dragon's menu hadn't changed significantly in a decade. Their locations needed updating, and their marketing approach heavily relied on older customers who remembered their glory days. Meanwhile, Chicago's restaurant scene was exploding with creative fusion concepts, farm-to-table establishments, and innovative approaches to traditional cuisines. I realized that Golden Dragon's strength, their traditional approach, was also their weakness in a rapidly changing market. Younger customers wanted authenticity combined with creativity, familiar flavors presented in unexpected ways, and dining experiences that felt both rooted in tradition and relevant to contemporary life. Heritage House had proven that this approach could succeed, and I began developing plans to bring that success back to Chicago. The strategy crystallized over my third year in Austin. Rather than returning to Chicago to compete directly with Golden Dragon, I would build something undeniably superior and force them to acknowledge my success. I would create a restaurant concept so innovative and successful that even my father couldn't dismiss it as American fusion experiments. I began developing relationships with Chicago food industry professionals, attending culinary conferences, and building connections with potential investors in my hometown. Heritage House's success had earned me credibility that opened doors previously closed to Thomas Shen's rebellious daughter. Food industry veterans who had known my family for decades suddenly wanted to hear my ideas about the future of Chinese cuisine in America. The breakthrough came when James Morrison, a prominent Chicago restaurateur and investor, visited Austin for a food festival. He dined at Heritage House and immediately wanted to discuss bringing my concept to Chicago. He'd been watching the city's restaurant scene evolve and believed there was a significant opportunity for innovative Chinese American cuisine that could compete with the city's best establishments. "Your father built something impressive," James said over dinner at Heritage House, "but he built it for a different generation. Chicago's ready for what you're doing here." That conversation led to a partnership that would fund my return to Chicago and provide the capital necessary to open not just one restaurant, but a concept that could eventually challenge Golden Dragon's dominance. We spent months developing plans for Dynasty Modern, a restaurant that would showcase everything I had learned about honoring tradition while embracing innovation. The location we secured was perfect, a stunning space in River North, just blocks from Golden Dragon's flagship location. The irony wasn't lost on me that I would be returning to the same neighborhood where Dad had dismissed my dreams, this time with the financial backing and industry credibility to make those dreams reality. As Dynasty Modern's opening approached, I made a decision that would complete my transformation from dismissed daughter to legitimate competitor. I would attend Chicago's Chinese New Year celebration at Golden Dragon, the same event where Dad traditionally made major announcements about the business. But this time, I wouldn't be returning as the prodigal daughter seeking acceptance. I would be returning as the successful restaurateur who had proven that his impractical daughter could indeed run both kitchens and boardrooms. The timing was perfect. Dynasty Modern would open just weeks after the New Year celebration, and the restaurant industry buzz was already building. Food critics were calling it one of the most anticipated openings in years. Investors were praising the concept's innovative approach to traditional cuisine, and early reservations indicated that Chicago was hungry for the Golden Dragon's flagship location buzzed with familiar energy as I stepped through the doors for the first time in 4 years. Red and gold lanterns hung from the ceiling, the same traditional decorations that had marked every Chinese New Year celebration of my childhood. The restaurant was packed with extended family, longtime customers, and business associates who had gathered for Dad's annual announcement dinner, a tradition that had become as predictable as the spring rolls and tea service. I had deliberately arrived 30 minutes after the scheduled start time, knowing that Dad would be finishing his welcome speech and preparing for the main event. My appearance caused immediate ripples of recognition and confusion as relatives and family friends processed my unexpected presence. "Alexandra," Aunt Linda rushed over, embracing me with genuine warmth. "We had no idea you were coming. Your father didn't mention you'd be here." "It's a surprise," I said, accepting hugs and answering polite questions about my time in Texas. I kept my responses vague but positive, letting people assume I was still struggling to find my place in the world while I scanned the room for my family members. Kevin stood near the bar, looking exactly as I had expected, slightly heavier, wearing an ill-fitting suit, and holding a drink that was clearly not his first of the evening. He spotted me across the room and raised his glass in a mock toast, his expression shifting from surprise to something resembling amusement. "Well, well," he said as I approached, "the prodigal daughter returns. Still playing chef in Texas?" "Something like that," I replied, accepting the hug he offered. "How's the restaurant business treating you?" Kevin shrugged, taking another sip of his whiskey. "Same as always. Dad's been talking about expansion again, but you know how these things go. Always planning, never quite executing." His casual dismissal of the business that employed him told me everything I needed to know about how little had changed in my absence. Kevin was still coasting on his birthright, contributing nothing while complaining about everything. Mom appeared beside us, her face lighting up with genuine joy at seeing me. She looked older, more tired than I remembered, but her embrace was fierce and emotional. "My daughter," she whispered in my ear, switching briefly to Mandarin, as she often did when overwhelmed with feeling. "I've missed you so much." "I've missed you too, Mom," I replied, meaning it completely. Despite everything that had happened with Dad, I had genuinely regretted the distance that my departure had created with her. Lily materialized next, squeezing me tightly before stepping back to examine my appearance with the critical eye of someone who knew me better than anyone. "You look different, more confident. Texas suits you." "It's been a learning experience," I said, appreciating her perceptiveness. Lily had always been the most emotionally intelligent member of our family, capable of reading subtle changes that others missed entirely. Dad's voice boomed across the restaurant as he tapped his chopsticks against a ceramic teacup, calling for attention. He stood at the front of the room near the largest table, wearing his favorite navy suit and the expression of someone who enjoyed being the center of attention. "Friends, family, honored guests," he began, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to commanding rooms. "Thank you all for joining us for our annual Chinese New Year celebration. As many of you know, this gathering marks not just the beginning of a new year, but an opportunity to reflect on our achievements and announce our plans for continued growth." I positioned myself near the back of the crowd where I could observe without being immediately visible to Dad. The familiar rhythm of his speech washed over me, the same combination of humility and pride that had characterized every family gathering of my childhood. "Golden Dragon has been blessed with another successful year. Our 5 locations continue to serve the finest authentic Chinese cuisine in Chicago, and our loyal customers have made us a cornerstone of the city's dining scene for over 40 decades. Polite applause rippled through the crowd. I noticed several younger attendees checking their phones, a sign that Dad's traditional approach to these announcements was losing its audience engagement. Tonight, I'm excited to announce the next chapter in Golden Dragon's story. After months of planning, we will be opening our 6th location in Schaumburg, bringing our family's authentic recipes to the northwest suburbs. More applause, though I noticed it was primarily from the older generation. The younger attendees looked politely bored, and I caught several eye rolls from cousins who had presumably heard similar announcements for years without seeing significant innovation or change. Furthermore, I'm pleased to announce that my son Kevin will be taking on expanded responsibilities as Director of Operations, overseeing the daily management of all Golden Dragon locations. Kevin straightened slightly, offering a modest wave to the crowd as if he had earned this promotion through merit rather than genetics. The applause was warm but routine, the kind of response reserved for announcements that surprised no one. This promotion represents the next generation of Chen family leadership, Dad declared, beaming with paternal pride. Kevin's business education and years of experience in our restaurants have prepared him to carry forward the traditions that have made Golden Dragon Chicago's premier destination for authentic Chinese cuisine. I felt the familiar sting of exclusion, the same sensation I had experienced countless times during my childhood and young adulthood. Even after 4 years away, even after building my own success, Dad's public dismissal of my existence still had the power to wound. But this time, I wasn't a powerless daughter absorbing another slight. This time, I had something to say. "Congratulations, Kevin," I called out, raising my voice to carry across the restaurant. The crowd turned toward me in surprise, many people noticing my presence for the first time. Alexandra, Dad said, his voice carefully neutral. Can't be done, I assumed. I came back for a special occasion, I replied, moving through the crowd toward the front of the room. People stepped aside, sensing that something unexpected was about to happen. Well, it's wonderful that you could join us. Perhaps you'd like to say a few words about your experiences in Texas. The invitation was clearly intended to be polite but dismissive, an opportunity for me to offer brief pleasantries before he moved on to more important matters. Instead, I accepted the implicit challenge. Actually, I would, I said, reaching the front of the room and turning to face the assembled crowd. The energy in the room shifted palpably. Conversations stopped, phones were lowered, and everyone focused their attention on what was clearly becoming an unexpected family drama. 4 years ago, I began, my voice clear and confident. I left Chicago because Dad made it clear that there was no place for me in Golden Dragon's future. He dismissed my ideas as impractical, my business plans as unrealistic, and my culinary education as irrelevant to serious restaurant operations. Dad's face was reddening, and I could see him preparing to interrupt. I continued before he could speak. So I went to Austin, and I did exactly what he said I couldn't do. I built a successful restaurant business from nothing. Not one restaurant, 3 restaurants, with a 4th opening next month. Together, they generate over $2 million in annual revenue, employ 43 people, and have earned recognition from food critics across the country. Murmurs of surprise and interest rippled through the crowd. I saw relatives and family friends exchanging glances, clearly recalibrating their understanding of my supposed failures in Texas. But that's not why I'm here tonight, I continued, pulling out my phone and opening the folder of photos I had carefully prepared. I'm here because next week, I'm opening Dynasty Modern and River North, a restaurant that will showcase everything Golden Dragon could have become if innovation hadn't been dismissed as a disloyalty to tradition. The room was completely silent now, everyone hanging on my words. Even Kevin had stopped drinking, his expression shifting from amusement to something approaching concern. Dynasty Modern has already received a starred review from Chicago Magazine. We're booked solid for the first 2 months. We have investors lined up for expansion, and industry professionals are calling it the future of Chinese American cuisine in Chicago. Dad found his voice at last. This is inappropriate, Alexandra. This is a family celebration, not a business competition. You're right, Dad, I replied, meeting his gaze directly. This isn't a competition. A competition implies that both sides have a chance to win. The words hung in the air like a challenge, and I could feel the entire room holding its breath. For 4 years, you've continued operating Golden Dragon exactly as you did when I left. Same menu, same approach, same dismissal of innovation. Meanwhile, I've been learning what customers actually want, what the industry is becoming, and how to build restaurants that honor tradition while embracing the future. I paused, letting the implication sink in before delivering the final revelation. Dynasty Modern isn't just another restaurant opening, Dad. It's a direct challenge to Golden Dragon's relevance in Chicago's evolving food scene. And unlike your daughter, whom you dismissed as impractical, Dynasty Modern has the backing, the vision, and a business model to prove that the future of Chinese cuisine in Chicago doesn't belong to restaurants that refuse to grow. The silence that followed was absolute, broken only by the distant sounds of kitchen activity and the hum of the restaurant's ventilation system. I had said everything I came to say, revealed everything I had built in secret, and challenged the foundation of everything Dad had assumed about his business and his family. Now I waited to see how the Chen...
6 months after that explosive Chinese New Year confrontation, I stood in the renovated offices above Dynasty Modern, reviewing quarterly reports that exceeded even my optimistic projections. The restaurant had become Chicago's most sought-after reservation, with a 3-month waiting list and industry recognition that had established our family name as innovators rather than traditionalists. The transformation hadn't been easy. Dad had initially threatened legal action, claiming I was damaging the Golden Dragon brand. But when his lawyers reviewed my business operations, they found nothing actionable. Only a daughter who had built something legitimately superior to what her family had created. The turning point came when Mom visited Dynasty Modern unannounced on a quiet Tuesday evening. She ordered methodically through our tasting menu, her face revealing nothing until the final course. Then she did something I had never seen before. She cried. "This is what your grandmother's cooking tasted like," she whispered, before we forgot that honoring tradition means making it live, not preserving it like a museum. 3 months later, Dad requested a private meeting. We sat in Dynasty Modern's empty dining room after service, the silence heavy with years of misunderstanding. He said finally, the words clearly costing him, "I was wrong. About you, about the business, about what success looks like." We didn't hug. We didn't immediately become the close father-daughter team I had once imagined. But we began talking. Really talking about food, business, and what it means to honor your heritage while building your own legacy. Kevin now manages Golden Dragon's day-to-day operations under my advisory guidance, finally learning the business he had inherited. The restaurants are slowly modernizing, incorporating lessons I learned in Texas while maintaining their authentic foundation. As for me, I split my time between Chicago and Austin, overseeing Dynasty Modern's expansion while mentoring other women navigating family business dynamics. The little girl who once felt invisible in her father's empire had become exactly what she always knew she could be, a leader who understood that real success isn't about proving others wrong, but about proving yourself right.
Like and subscribe.